From Phil Svitek comes a weekly digital series where he shares his insights, concepts, and findings learned during his 15-year journey of working in the entertainment industry. Each lesson offers you a roadmap to overcome the challenges that all artists face on the path to success. Welcome to a Phil Svitek podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and I, every now and then, am joined by my dear friends that I like to share with you, not because they're my friends, but because they have something to offer. And today I'm joined by my friend Blake V, who is, I know her in a hosting capacity, but there's a lot of other creative sides to her. And she's also a yoga instructor with it. And she is. What else did I miss? I mean, you have you have a length and breadth of everything that you do. Like, what would nail it down? Like, what's the singular thing that's like, this is what I'm pretty much known for?
Totally. And thank you, Phil, for that introduction. I'm super happy to be here. It's been a long time since we chatted. So thank you for having me. And I am many things, as we all are, right? Wearing our many hats. But I would definitely say that right now, lately, let's put me in the wellness category. Because yes, I am an RYT 200 yoga instructor. I've been teaching yoga for a couple of years. And especially during this like lockdown quarantine period where it's been tricky for us all to do anything. I've definitely focused more on that and started kind of a new platform of wellness. And, to me, that just seems like if everything else fails and we can't figure out, jobs and politics and social injustice issues, at least we can focus inward on ourselves and start there with self-care. That's a really important thing in a time like now. So that's where my head's at currently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, one of the things that I think you and I could connect on, I think, one of my mantras is this idea that you can have all the skill sets in the world, but if you're not like working your mind, you're never going to find success. And so I kind of, especially with you with yoga, I wanted to really deep dive on that, the importance of, call it mental fortitude, call it peaceful mind, whatever term you have for it. But I think, how has that helped you in your creative space, and talk about that importance and, how you got into yoga and teaching.
Absolutely. Okay. So the way you formed the question, I think, is like a good two-part answer. So first of all, with yoga, certainly the mind space is very important for your practice. A lot of times you think that yoga is just about like flexibility and like doing cool poses and standing on your head, right? And that's a fun component, but yoga is much more than that. It's much more a headspace, a meditation space, something to really focus on in your movement. And even going through yoga teacher training, that's a major component of the training, is kind of like, focusing as you're meditating, trying to train yourself to get your thoughts away from your brain, cut the chatter that's going on in your head. And that clear space for meditation really allows for some cool things, and just like you were saying about, how it kind of taps into your creativity. I have definitely been like a creative person throughout life. I've had like 17 different ventures that I've done throughout life. And I feel like every single one of those had something in common. And that was just like, some sort of like a clear vision almost of like what each endeavor was. And that clear vision, I think, comes from being able to kind of like sort out your thoughts, see them clearly. And what better way to do that than to train kind of your brain and yourself to calm down exterior thoughts, and just focusing on you. Yeah. And I know that that's a funny thing too, because when you say like focus on you, it totally sounds selfish. For me, when I hear that, I'm like, nobody's thinking about anybody else. But it's not even that. It's more so building such like a strong foundation, just kind of like in your soul, in yourself, and in your mind, so that you can care for others in a better way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, it almost in a weird way, it makes you open to actually listening and being empathetic to the world around you in that sense. So I completely agree. And one of the things, so you mentioned the word chatter. I want to zone in on that. How much chatter is there in your mind currently? Like, is it Is there, because of all the practice that you've done, I imagine it must be less, but at the same time, there's so much chatter, it almost like equals itself out of like, there's a lot. So I'm just kind of curious.
It's 100%. It's endless. It's full capacity. I mean, it's a lot of chatter. And that's the thing is, I think, I mean, maybe there's some master meditation practitioner, maybe the monks in Nepal, maybe they have mastered no chatter. But, in our modern life, especially current times where it's like, a list of news every single day, I think it's really hard to erase the chatter when you're not focusing on it. So if meditation is a huge thing now the past few years. I know, Phil, us at AfterBuzz, we were really familiar with Maria Menounos and kind of her connection to like transcendental meditation and her, practitioners that she works with to kind of like, educate on these things. And, and I couldn't agree more on these things. These methods of clearing your mind are just really cool. From my experience, I mean, I got chatter 24/7. I think when I sleep, I have chatter, and then my dreams are just manifestations of the chatter. However, for me, when I can actually move through a yoga flow, that to me is meditation. It's trickier almost to sit still and just really connect with my head, but there's really something special about a consistent, like routine movement of yoga that you can just focus on the movement of your body, and that helps me to like get rid of the chatter in my head.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful, and I do think, like you mentioned, like in a modern sense, because I think in a lot of ways, like all these practices of the mind are really to be able to integrate us into life. Otherwise, like we might as well just meditate for the rest of eternity. It's like you know what I mean? We still have to, in my opinion, have to contribute some way, shape, or form to society. And let me get your take on this. I heard this recently, and I want to see if this like would be an accurate way.
Okay.
The chatter in your mind is not that it's bad. It's like a kid, right? The kid's going to do what the kid's going to do. And you only really have to kind of ultimately step in if he's about to like cross the street and then there's a car coming.
Yeah. Do something bad. Yes.
Yeah. Is that an accurate portrayal of like, because I think we put such an emphasis on our thoughts when in reality, they're just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's funny because absolutely the time to step in is if your brain's going to the dark place and, it's telling you all kinds of stuff you don't need to hear. And especially if it deals with like self-confidence and, our brains sabotage us sometimes to just kind of create some self-hate that's completely unwarranted. It's our brain going wacky saying we can't do things and, whatever else. And that for sure is the time to step in and cut those thoughts out. But what I'm thinking of right now is like, when we're falling asleep and our brain just goes like haywire if we can't fall asleep immediately. And it's like, oh, I need to buy potato chips. Oh, what did my third grade teacher say? Oh, my mom told me I need to go do this. It's like those are just the thoughts that are ever present, So in a way, I feel like that's hard to really help. I don't know that you can even really fully escape those kinds of thoughts that are in your head, but a focused effort to, take time in your day and truly, even if you start with 1 minute, of really focusing on nothing, I think it can slowly help to, kind of infiltrate that pattern into your daily thoughts. And I will admit I'm not there yet, but I've definitely heard from some people who just meditation has changed their life and they are able at a snap of a finger to just kind of go into this meditative state. And I think they can kind of cut out that chatter, I only pray to get there one day. I know you mentioned just meditating for the rest of our lives. And I'll tell you lately, that sounds great. Just move me to a mountain cave somewhere. I'll just meditate forever.
No, I mean, it would be wonderful in a large sense. I mean, I'm definitely like, for me, what I try to do is compartmentalize it. So you mentioned like, oh, I got to buy potato chips or whatever else. I try to, if that's in my mind, I try to clear it of like, all right, let me write it down. And let me also assign it like a time, like, okay, well, I'm going grocery shopping, let's say Thursday. It's on, like, great. Bag of chips, it will get bought Thursday. So it like almost assigns it as due task. The thing I'm having more of an issue is long-term projects. So, whether it's fiction writing or movie making, to me, because like it's not done until it's done. And like, I mean, novels can take years, so can movies. I'm constantly thinking about that. And like, that's the side that I can't shut up, as opposed to the one-off tasks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, any thoughts for me? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Tips?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure perhaps you've experienced that.
Absolutely. Yes. That's a fantastic point, Phil, because I mean, truly these things that are ongoing, and it may not even be like a project per se, like a creative project. I mean, it can be our relationships. It can be, what's going on with your dad, or what, your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. Those are our constant ties to like society that do keep that chatter. And the only thing that I can think is this, a lot of my creativity literally comes from like day-to-day interactions and the things that happen from day to day. Sometimes a stagnant place doesn't really feed creativity, in my experience. But, that said, I'll put it this way. When I teach a yoga class, something that I really like to say when the class begins and when it ends is I like to remind the students to say like, okay, for this hour, forget everything outside of this room. Forget everything outside of this room. Don't think about the potato chips you have to pick up. Don't think about your kids. Don't think about your boyfriend. Just, you are here. You're here. You're on your mat. And the only thing you're focusing on is your practice right now for this hour. Like, give yourself that, self-focus for an hour. And, throughout our practice and at the end, when we come into Shavasana, it's a time to chill, a time to reflect. And I say it again, quiet your mind, bring yourself to your mat for the next 3 minutes. So I think that even though we've got these long-term thought processes, long-term projects, long-term relationships, I think that the first place to get any kind of quiet, kind of what you're asking, is in a way to compartmentalize. You compartmentalize the time you have for your projects. You compartmentalize the time you have for your relationships, and then you compartmentalize a little time for yourself for that meditation. Even if it's an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, if you do it every single day, I mean, I think that is the great setup to any pattern, and it will really start to help you, because if you're worrying 23 and a half hours, about your project and dreaming about it and everything, that one little 30 minutes of like respite can really do a lot, I think, to just kind of clear your mind for a set amount of time. And then I think it will make you stress a little bit less. Humans are such like stressful creatures, and we're so like worried all the time. When's it gonna last? How long is it gonna last? When's it gonna end? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if we in our little human brains can put a time to it and say like, okay, Phil, every day, at lunchtime, you're going to do 30 minutes and you're going to turn everything off, and you're just going to sit with yourself, maybe close your eyes, maybe move a little in a yoga practice, put a timer for 30 minutes. It's going to be hard as hell at first, but then once you get into the routine of it, you'll miss it if you don't have it,
Yeah.
And that's been my experience, is just incorporating a little bit.
What do you say to those? Because I mean, I think like at least the people that I generally interact with, they understand that therapy is good. They understand like self-care practices are good. They even understand like the science of sleep, like getting more sleep. And yet like even though they logically understand all this stuff, they go against it. And it's just baffling to me. So there's just evidence all there. Like even Winston Churchill, one of the most cited people for any quote, took naps habitually. And it's just fascinating to me, like our resistance to taking care of ourselves. Like, what do you say to those, those people who logically know this is good for me?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because you're so right. I mean, this idea of self-care is relatively a new thing. I'd say just the last couple years, that word was even created as something that we should be focusing on for ourselves. And it is a lot easier to worry about someone else and their problems than to worry about yourself. A lot of times I see that, where it is a lot easier to care for the relationships in your life, care for your kids, do all of this, because focusing on yourself takes a little work, even if it is just to sit in the quiet for 30 minutes. That's hard. That's hard to get to that point because of our thoughts and everything else. And, I hate to say it, but again, just kind of my experience, it's almost to me like the people that have these doubts and are kind of the haters of all of this, it's almost like, I don't even know if there's really a great way to convince them other than them having something directly happen to them. You know, for example, one of the big things that made me go into teaching yoga is I woke up overnight about 5 years ago with some crazy health problems that went undiagnosed for a couple years, and it was this wacky journey. And I was hurting all the time. I was racking up medical debt. It was like so stressful and crazy. And once I started committing to this program of like movement for my body, clearing my mind in a meditation space, it set off a chain of events that like truly, truly changed my life. And I think that the only way that I got there was because I had this thing happen to me that transformed. Now, I know that not everybody has like a transformational thing, that happens. But the best thing that I can say for anybody else is just, probably the power of friendship. If you have friends right now that you're in direct contact with, and you're just raving about, moving your body, seeking self-care in this way, taking meditation space for yourself. For example, if you've got a friend you're hanging out with and you say, oh no, I've got to do my meditation at 2:30, hey, let's go get a drink or let's go get lunch or whatever. And you say, oh no, I got to meditate. That sets off a spark around people that kind of shows like, oh wow, Phil takes this shit real seriously. And he schedules it for himself. He cares about himself. That is his self-care, And I bet you Tony Robbins does that, I bet you he's got his schedule to a T. In the morning, he wakes up, he does the cold pool plunge, he goes in the sauna, he does his mind, he meditates. I feel like I hear that like a lot of successful people have kind of, a schedule that allows for the expansion of your mind, either meditation or movement, exercise. All of these things are really important, I think, to help clear your mind,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. And I have found it in my life, like, the more I've done for myself and like in that sense, like, whether it is therapy or so forth, people have seen a change in me and they're like, oh, that's good, and maybe I'm trying to nudge them. I'm like, you can do it too, like if you think I'm seeing benefits, you could see benefits too. And, whether or not they take me up on it ultimately is up to them. But isn't it, I want to go back to kind of a thing that you mentioned, like in a sense, I'll summarize it as like, we always try to control our world around us as if like, if we control, our environment, we're good. And especially in the context of COVID, like that just goes out the window. Cause I talk to so many people and it's like their ideal scenario. If, under normal circumstances, if I knew like when I could go back to LA and start my job again, I would know how to make a plan. It's like, you don't understand. We never had control. And it just, that part of it fascinates me. There's not a question, but I'm curious to kind of know your thoughts as far as people dealing with this uncertainty.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. So I'm really glad you asked this. This is one of my favorite like things to talk about, because this too is something that through meditation, through a lot of therapy as well, just through kind of being a student of life, I feel like I, struggle this and understand a different perspective. And that is, you can't control anything, nothing. You can barely even control what's going on in your immediate universe. And a lot of people try to control other people, someone does something that pisses them off, hurts their feelings, whatever. And then, it becomes a fight to control the other person, how they're supposed to act and everything. And you simply can't control anything. People weren't able to control, just like you said, with, the COVID, we weren't able to control our jobs. We weren't able to control contracting the virus for those that got sick. All of this was out of our control. So, I don't know if maybe you've heard this word detachment, but detachment is an important word that's kind of worked through, for sure, yoga practice. And I really think kind of in the realm of like universal law, if you care to go that route, there's really this idea of things have a rhythm, things have a cycle. There's yin yang, something happens that sets off an equal, reaction. It's all this kind of universal law. And part of it is to say that one single human controls none of it. There's this whole universe outside of us working and collaborating and doing everything it's doing. We don't even fully understand it. And sometimes to just put yourself into perspective of like how small you are in the universe, like it's crazy to think that you could control everything. So one thing that I've really loved working on, probably the past year especially, is this idea of detachment. So it's like, we have things we love. We have, a guitar or a TV or like material things, our car, and all of this. And we become, you know, we get to a point where that defines us, and then I become defined by the guitar and the car and the stuff. And then it's like, if that leaves for whatever reason, my identity is shattered. But we're not our stuff. We are us, and we are resilient, and we are completely capable of rebuilding any situation.
Mhm.
So it's a daunting topic, I feel like, because if you're in the space of feeling that everything is that you have your fingers in the pot, so when stuff goes wrong it's all your fault. That's a lot of pressure. That's like
Yeah.
an exhausting place to be. So I think it's really neat, this idea that, okay, I'm a cog in the works, and a lot of things are happening, and yeah, maybe I get to choose which potato chips I buy today, but there's all these other things at work that maybe I can't control, and that is okay. In fact, it's even better because it's less work I have to do. If I can just like relinquish my stress and my discomfort, any of these bad feelings that come with not being able to control everything, if I just give that up to the universe and say, screw it, let's see how it works out. So many times, I swear 9 out of 10 times, the universe has a weird way of making things work in our favor, even when you haven't orchestrated the whole thing. So I've seen that a few times in my life, and especially this past year, I just with this quarantine and this lockdown, I think this is the best lesson. If anyone's trying to learn anything during this time, it's that you can't control anything. It's that the universe is going to do what it's going to do, and that's where we fall back on our resiliency and really use that to like shine as humans.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Joe Dispenza and his work?
I am, yes. I love Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, because I mean, it just because in that sense, like when you talk about like the universe, providing the path, so to speak, I think for anyone listening who doesn't know, like, and hopefully I don't butcher this, but his idea is that if we operate in a more present state, a higher emotional state, meaning like happiness, excitement, joy, that creates a lot more positive energy, and like things will kind of vibrationally come to us, as opposed to coming from like a I'm sad low state, because like that
Completely.
itself, and I wasn't even going full in, like that just has such a low energy, so of course
Yeah.
it's not going to be attracted to it.
Yeah.
Not to get too far off topic. What drew you to Joe Dispenza, and I don't know, like what's your biggest
Yeah.
takeaway?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you. Yes. So, okay. So this takes us back a few years to when I woke up overnight with the health stuff, and I was like, what is going on? I was living a life that was just full of stress, full of like doubt and sadness. And I was working so hard to make something happen. And then when nothing was happening, I was like blaming myself, and it was coming back onto me. So I was, physically ill in this time. I was working full time and commuting literally like 3 to 4 hours in a car every single day. I had 17 things on my plate. I had issues with relationships in my family and my boyfriend at the time. It was just a big mess, right? So I remember I would be commuting back and forth to work, and I was like, okay, I love music, but I'm sick of the radio. What else can I do? And that's when I first started getting into podcasts. And so I started finding, health podcasts, whatever, science podcasts, anything that was interesting to me. And I swear by fate, I stumbled upon on YouTube. This is an audiobook for anybody to go listen to that wants to. It's by the author Florence Scovel Shinn, and it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's right in that category of new thoughts. And she is an original author, one of the first female authors of New Thought, and she wrote this book in 1920. And it holds up today, Phil. It's nuts. Like, it's small, it's an easy read, and it blows your mind. So I see this YouTube link and I go, Game of Life and How to Play It. Well, hell, I want to win at this game. I want to learn how to play it. So I listened to it. And it struck me so much that I would keep listening to it. Every drive to and from work, I would just replay it. I bought a hard copy. I highlighted, I underlined, I did all the things. And really what the book is it teaches you this kind of universal law. It teaches you, you know, sort of the power in relinquishing your worry. It does you no good to worry. If anything, worry and doubt and sadness brings more like negativity to you because you're in that space mentally, frequency wise. And you mentioned something earlier, you put it in a really good way. And it was basically just, you know, if you can just be happy, you don't even really have to be, this is my opinion, and I feel like I've read this too in this new thought realm, but I really believe that you don't even really have to be like killing the game, hustling so hard that you're killing yourself. You know, so some people take the hustle so hard and they're making themselves sick. They're burning the candle at both ends. They're not getting the good sleep, good, you know, just like we're talking about. It's like they're not really respecting themselves. And yet when you can just let the universe kind of work for you, a lot of really cool things can happen, and you're not killing yourself. It's the greatest of both worlds, you know? And sometimes when I'm talking about it, I feel like full woo-woo. I feel like I sound like a crazy person, like saying like the universe, right? But I wouldn't feel so confident speaking about it if I didn't have things in my own life line up in a real interesting way once I kind of started, you know, identifying these things, or better yet, things that happened in my past that I didn't know why happened. And now learning this new thought theories, I could see how it happened in the past, you know? So if nothing else, I just find it wildly fascinating and like fun. And sometimes I think, you know, what a fun way to live life. Like, what if life didn't have to be hard? What if it didn't have to be painful? What if it didn't have to be sad? All these negative things that we fight day to day. What if it could be rad? What if it could be fun and fulfilling and loving and exciting and magical? Like all these good things. And, you know, man, I swear it's a perspective shift away from thinking that life is that way, you know?
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Do you feel like there's a benefit of hindsight and experience? Because I like just kind of looking at it, you know, we always ask kids, what do you want to be, from such an early age, right? And we never ask them why they want to be anything. It's just, what do you want to be? And I've seen, like, I've literally seen like 12-year-olds being like, I'm a failure. Like you know, my grades are slipping, and I'm not, and it's like at 12 years old, they've already like defined their future that they're never going to have a job worthwhile.
Yeah.
And again, it's that paradoxical thing where there's just so much evidence of like most successful people didn't, you know, in their 20s, they kind of experimented. They didn't know what their path in life was. It's only with the benefit of hindsight that it becomes, oh, this thing prepared you in a unique way to do this, and this thing prepared you uniquely for this position. And then, like, you know, 10 years later, you were that person. Like, I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. And
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and I agree with you. It is a fascinating thing. And to me, it is very much largely a Western ideal. This is very much a Western thing to say, I'm going to put society's expectations on this child. I'm going to put my family expectations on this child. Forget what this child thrives at. It's going to be a doctor. It's going to be a lawyer. It's my way or the highway, right? It's more that control mindset. You know, we've got lineages of family lines and societal rules and guidelines that really put us in our place since we're born, you know? And here's another interesting read. This is fascinating. I think you'll like this. I've got this other book. I forget the name of it. I'll have to get it to you after this, but it's from an African author. His name is Malidoma Somé, I believe. And he grew up in like East Africa in a tribal life. And he, you know, has since been an international author. But he has an amazing perspective for us in the Western world, because he really is showing, you know, the power of community, how tribal life is very different than what we've crafted in Western society. And the biggest thing he says is this: we force our children to become things they don't want to do or can't do, and they're set up for a lifetime of judgment and sadness and, you know, unfulfillment. So in the particular tribe that he comes from the way they did things there was that once the baby was born, they wouldn't even give it a name. They wouldn't put no preconceptions on the baby. The baby just lives, it thrives. As it's gaining its personality, as it's a toddler, as whatever, they zero in on what its interests are, what it likes to do, and then it gets a name and they decide where it'll go in the tribe and its duties and things. But there's a lot more freedom in this perspective in terms of seeing what a person's potential is, because of course there's going to be in our own world here. I mean, of course there's people that have natural proclivities for like numbers and math and maybe would make great engineers. And then there's people over here who don't know a thing about numbers, but man, they're an amazing, musician or something. And you're absolutely right in the way that our society is set up. I think are forced to learn things through experience and figure out our calling in hindsight, because we don't have the wherewithal to respect the child's growth, in our society to see what they'd be good at.
Yeah, no, I'm really fascinated by that. And I think tangentially to that, there's an interesting notion like that I heard recently. Everything in our world, at least, supports this idea that like you're not enough. Meaning like if you did nothing today, then you literally have shown quote unquote no value to the world. You didn't bring in any money, you didn't make anything. And isn't it fast? Like it's that weird thing. We try to like in this like oxymoron sense tell like, oh no, you're worthy of love. Of course everyone's worthy of love, but it's like, well, you're not, unless you actually do something and have a job and whatever else, you're not really worthy of much. Isn't that, I just find that fascinating. Yes.
Oh, it is. And you know what? I think that is a very, very, very current struggle, especially politically. And I won't take it politically there, but
I mean, you can go ahead if you want to. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, cool. Because I'm cool talking about it. But basically, it's just this idea that, just as you said, America, Western society, capitalism at large, breeds this idea of living. You have got to work, you've got to break your back, you've got to, just toil all day long and be grateful that you get to toil, and especially right now, a great example of that for me is minimum wage. Nobody can live on minimum wage. You just can't. It's proven. The numbers. Get our numbers guy over here to prove it. But it's simply not sustainable. And yet we've got all this red tape, all this bureaucracy to get through to simply say a human cannot live on minimum wage in California, let's say. Yeah. And in America, we are hard pressed with this hustle lifestyle, and I'm guilty of that, in my 20s and my early 20s, I had like 7 jobs at once and half of them were unpaid. And I was just, hustling here, hustling there, trying to make my mark, because that's American. You got to work hard to make your mark, So I love that you brought this up, Phil, because I really do believe that every single human is enough, even if you do nothing. And this took me even just recently to like organize my thoughts and figure out what that means, because, we're labeled with lazy if we don't achieve enough by a certain time, and a lot of people have had, fantastic achievements way later in life, maybe after they have kids or once they retire, just to put it into perspective. And I just feel like, especially in a time like now where, something like 45 million Americans have lost their jobs in America, we're set with a brand new foundation of perhaps not even being able to toil away all day long. Things are not open. If we can't work, it should still be that you're a human and that you're on this earth to live. And I think that is something that, that was something that existed in like tribal early human life, that I don't think every person had to break their back to exist. There was a communal dynamic, but, I just feel like there was probably some sort of appreciation and leeway for people to just exist. And we are 100% missing that in modern society. And, I think it's something hard to keep up with. And I don't know about your friends, but my friends definitely have, we've kind of been talking about this whole kind of like spiritual awakening. If you've heard any of that for 2020, 2020 is kind of this year that like all this terrible stuff is happening, but it's meant to like crack open like a new awakening for anybody that's, spiritual and on the woke path. And I love thinking of it that way though, because I think that now is a beautiful time to be able to maybe relook at our American society, relook at our politics, and see like, okay, does it really work for us? Is the 1% ruling the 99% really a cool thing? Do we really want minimum wage? Do we really want a 5-day, 8-hour a day work week? It's like, we have a lot more power in numbers, and I'd certainly be happy to revitalize this whole system we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm going to give you some word vomit, and you can pick and choose what you want to comment on.
Okay.
So number one, I agree. I mean, I would imagine that in communal societies, like the fact that child raising was probably viewed upon as a serious task, and yet we can't even give women the ability, paid time to take care of their kid. Like it's just disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Two, Tiger Woods and his dad. Tiger Woods' dad would like just like he would push Tiger to like the limit, and they had a safety word, if you will, of that Tiger could get out of, and he never used it. And I think it's the dreaded word. It's like the anti-capitalist word of enough. It's always more, 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 and it's enough. And then the third thing, I in that sense, well, actually, I have two more. So, I was reading today, because I've seen people argue that, well, Jeff Bezos is a hard worker. And I'm like, listen, Jeff Bezos may be a really hard worker, but you don't get to $170 billion by quote unquote working hard. How much harder are you working? And it's, they calculated out, like they would have to compare it to minimum wage janitors or whatever. He's working 70,000 times harder. It's like, how do you even quantify
Impossible. Yeah, that's crazy.
And then the last thing, something encouraging that I did read was you don't need to get everyone on board for any sort of spiritual awakening. You just need critical mass. And the encouraging thing to me is we are kind of reaching a critical mass. I feel, I don't know. I could be wrong. Hopefully I'm not wrong.
No, and I agree with you. No, and I love it. Those were great words, and I'll pick them out. I completely agree with you that yes, I mean, this is just any type of like political, emotional, societal upheaval breeds an opportunity to relook at things, and just like you said, I mean, I believe that there is an element of critical mass that is being achieved right now. People that maybe thought differently 3 or 4 years ago are seeing a new light right now, and that goes for a lot of things. I mean, politically, emotional development wise, and I think it's a rad time. I'm like excited for it. And in regards to like Tiger Woods and Jeff Bezos, so enough really is a terrible word for an American, right? We're expected to have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and it's almost like the more you work.
Sorry to cut you off. Like I remember, like God forbid you as a host, as a woman, showed up in the same outfit twice. Like it's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
God forbid you would be crucified.
Completely. And then that's even a whole nother conversation of double standard and sexism that is rampantly present even today in this emotionally heightened aware time. We're still hating on women, and that's just facts, and absolutely that's a completely different conversation too, and worth having. I mean, this whole judgment is doubled for women, but it exists for all humans, and this whole like enough, this whole like forcing yourself to do more work. Tiger's dad forcing Tiger to really like push his limits. And it's like that, is it can be enviable in certain situations, but really what it happens to most people is they get burnt out. They have nervous breakdowns. They get physical ailments that are caused by, emotional unbalance. There's a lot of harm that I think can come from this hustle lifestyle. So me personally, this whole like work harder hustle idea, I'm over it. I don't even believe in it anymore. I'm thinking we need like
in the case of like Tiger, a lot of, I mean, in the context that I read it, it was always like, yeah, he's an amazing golfer, but look at the cost, on his marriage and his family life and all that. You know what I mean? So it's not like quote unquote burnout, but it had a cost.
Completely. Another great example similar to that is Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson. Papa Joe would just crack the whip on all those kids. And poor little Michael was so little and had a life of just the lights, fame. He had no escape. And, sad things happened in his adult life too. So you're absolutely right. I completely think there is a cost for an unbalanced life, especially when you're a child. Childhood is a really interesting, delicate thing, I think. Your first 5 years are your formative years. If things are wacky during that time, that already sets the stage for some adult, misalignment, and then just your childhood in general. It's such a short period of time of life that if you are not balanced, I think it's a sad disadvantage. You may have money and fame at the end of it, but what is that if you're still broken in a sense? And the Jeff Bezos topic is interesting to me because tell me if you have any relation to this, but my grandmother is a great example for this because she is 83 years old, and the way her mind was formed in 1930s, 1940s America was to say that the harder you work, the more successful you will be. So that the top rich people in this world, she goes, oh, they work so hard. It goes hand in hand. It's like, if you're a billionaire, you must work so hard. And I simply don't believe that's true. I think that it's a lot of work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And I think that, Jeff Bezos was probably very smart, and he, figured out some interesting pathways to get to where he is now. But you're right. He's not working 70,000 times harder than the janitor down at down at Staples Center, or, the single mom working at Taco Bell, or two different jobs. You know what I mean? And it's almost offensive, in my opinion, to belittle the hard work that every minimum wage worker does. And it is hard work. And people that don't have cars and have to rely on public transportation, to belittle them so much and say they don't work hard, but Jeff Bezos does, Warren Buffett does, all these billionaires are just really revered for the hard work. And I just don't think that is a healthy perspective in terms of work,
Yeah. I completely agree, as does Chloe. Hence why she was barking. She was like, yeah, go girl.
That's right. See, I got you, Chloe. That's right.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, I would love to. I mean, we've covered so much ground, and I could go on for many more topics.
I know, all day.
What do you what's an important message on your mind that you would like to share while you have this time?
An important message. Well, just kind of based like where my head's at, where my heart's at right now. I mentioned earlier, I've kind of started. I started a new. We'll call it a platform during this lockdown time, and it's called Making Conscious Moves. And it's a website. It's going to be a podcast. It's an Instagram page. Anyways, and it's basically a tie between yoga and the movement component, making conscious moves with your body, and then making conscious moves with your mind. The podcast has guests that have made some really cool moves, doing positive things, and that I think is a message that's really important to me. Is that in a time when you can't control anything, let's look inward. Let's see what we can help within ourselves. And to me, the biggest catalyst of healing has always been physical movement. And, if you can even start with the tiniest yoga practice, the tiniest meditation, set the stage for those physical moves, I feel like that is just, the tree trunk that branches out to all kinds of interesting mental, emotional healing and opportunities.
I know I said it kind of last, but like, I'm really curious to know your thoughts, and hope mine, you could choose not to answer and I'll cut it out, but like, cause it's kind of a controversial thing, maybe. This idea, like, it's also interesting to me as far as America, like, our number one fight against like COVID is like, okay, we need a vaccine, we need this, as opposed to also looking inward. like, listen, I'm not saying like I'm pro mask, I'm all that stuff, but I still think if we took better care of ourselves, better eating, better sleep, better eating, right? Then I think we would be in a much better position also to fight COVID beyond just like wearing a mask and so forth.
Yes, and I completely agree. And for the record, Phil, for you and for this show here, I just want to say that I love a little controversy and I'm never afraid to talk about it. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I really think that our society is set up for a quick fix. Our society is not set up for us to care about ourselves, to have enough money to be able to have self-care, to have enough hours in a day to focus on ourselves and our families. I mean, we've created this American structure where we're working all the time, can't sleep, stress, fast food, all these variants. And of course we need a vaccine because lifelong we've not been trained to care for ourselves in a proper way. So I absolutely agree with you that is, a really unfortunate downfall that we're recognizing now. You're not alone in coming to this realization, and I can only pray, fingers crossed, that others are having this realization too. Absolutely. Why don't we look inward? Why can't we take better care of ourselves? Why can't, a fitness class and organic food not be laughed at? Why isn't a fitness class and organic food the norm and meant for every person of every socioeconomic class, of every race? That's another thing too, is I've gotten comments that the wellness field is predominantly white, and a lot of people of color are having trouble accessing it, feeling welcome in it, and that's a whole nother conversation too, is that not only do we have a structure that really neglects humans in America, largely the Western world. Not only is that our structure, but we're in the process just really breaking down everybody along the way. Everybody along the ladder of life is feeling their version of discontent. And if we, Phil, could create this sort of critical mass, looking at that as well, our work structure, our political ideologies, our importance to our health. I swear that just, things could be so much better. And to me, it's just a shame that we're in 2020. We have so much technology, so many smart people, kind people, amazing people. And yet this is the world we're living in, where there's fights in families over politics. And, we're dealing with racial issues that, in my opinion, I thought we were done with in 1960. And, it's a whole shit show, excuse my French. And it in my opinion, doesn't have to be, but it's another conversation that goes into kind of, controls of people, government controls of people, societal controls of people. And then here we are dealing with COVID-19.
Yeah.
So, it's tricky.
I mean, in a sense, misery is just as agreeable as happiness. So I think in a large sense,
misery loves company.
Yeah, people are a little hesitant to change. And on the plus of, like, one of the encouraging things, I've said it many times before, but I'll say it again, is the idea that if something is it better, then it's good. Because I think, like, everyone's like, oh, well, I can imagine if someone that's like not open-minded and has listened to this much, like, congrats, like, kudos to you. But
Yeah.
I really believe, like, a lot of opposition is always this idea, like, well, whatever you're proposing, it's like you just want to tear everything down. And it's like, okay, we don't have to get everything perfect, but if it's better, then that's good. And that's kind of like how I like to work, of like, can we make incremental steps at least?
I love that. It doesn't have to be a complete revolution of everything we know. And absolutely, there can be incremental changes to the better. And this is something crazy I have found too recently. Like, we'll just say, like, in this recent political climate, is that people seem to be like clinging to the way things are now, and almost afraid to move in any different direction. I'm not quite sure how to explain it. It's almost like they'll take the shit treatment that's happening right now, just to avoid, like, any work or any changes, that potentially could be better, because they're fearful it'll be worse. I don't know. I've got some family members, some other people I've come across, where they just are kind of it's almost like they've given up. It's like a relinquishment of hope. I don't know. And they're just like, no, like it's fine. It's fine. Keep things as they are. You know, it's too scary to imagine that we could have different work schedules, different ways that we treat women and mothers and children. And that's too like scary because they're so indoctrinated, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the key. That I mean, in a sense, we've been beaten down to this idea of like here is the normal, and F you if you think that like like normal's bad, and it's like, well, that normal wasn't really that great. It was just
exactly
a way, but it wasn't a great way either. So
no, yeah.
So whenever I talk with my friends and I have conversations like this, I like to end it with like, well, once again, we have solved world peace.
Hallelujah. Today is a good day.
So I'll kind of leave it on that note, but of course share website, Instagram, all that stuff. Where can people kind of interact with you directly and so forth?
Absolutely. So I'm Blake V. You can follow me individually on Instagram at Blake V Media. And to start making some good moves in your life, check out Making Conscious Moves on Instagram and on YouTube for some great yoga tutorials and some cool life information.
Awesome. Fantastic. And of course, all those links are down below in the description box, so easier for you to access. And as always, if you have any questions, please write them down. If you have thoughts of your own, please write them down. It could be in the comments section or on social media. Tag us both, I'd certainly love to chat with you. I'm sure Blake would like to interact.
I would love it.
So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.